The host at the wedding in Cana stands in the corner, his fingers white-knuckled around the rim of an empty wine jug. His face is gray, and honestly, in first-century Judea, this isn't just a logistical hiccup or a mere oversight. It's a social catastrophe of the highest order. Think about it. A wedding wasn't just a party, it was the village's primary economic engine, a week-long public demonstration of honor and community alliance. To run out of wine, that was a breach of the sacred code of hospitality that could shadow a family's reputation for a generation. It invited litigation, public shaming, and long-term economic isolation. The host is staring down the barrel of social ruin, and into this high-pressure, desperate silence, Jesus walks. He doesn't storm a temple. He doesn't debate a Pharisee. He chooses this moment, right at the threshold of his public ministry, to reveal his power by solving a kitchen crisis. Clear your head of the soft, stained glass version of this story. This is a dusty, hillside town in Galilee. The air is thick with the scent of roasting lamb, the humidity of too many bodies in a confined, stone-walled space, and the sharp, sour, lingering smell of wine dregs. The noise is constant, fiddles, shouting, the rhythmic, heavy clatter of feet on limestone. The host is hovering on the edge of collapse because the social contract is fraying. A first-century wedding feast was an endurance test. It lasted 7 days. The entire village was expected to attend, and the family was expected to provide. The host had calculated his resources down to the last drop, but calculation failed. This is when Mary, Jesus' mother, spots the panic. She pulls him aside. She states a simple fact: they have no wine. It's an invitation to act, and Jesus' reaction is famously sharp. He says, "My hour has not yet come." He's pushing back against the expectation. He's measuring the cost of his public introduction. But he acts anyway. He gives instructions to the servants, who move through the shadows of the banquet hall. Jesus points to 6 massive stone jars. These are not decorative pottery. In the Greek, they are called betim, heavy, immovable, volcanic stone vessels specifically designated for Jewish ritual law. These jars were not for drinking, they were for purification. Every guest entering the home would ritually wash their hands, and often the utensils they used to eat, in this water. These jars were the physical manifestation of the Mosaic system: constant cleansing, constant maintenance, and a rigid, visible divide between the clean and the unclean. Now you might wonder, why stone? In that era, earthenware or clay pots were porous. If a dead insect fell into a clay jar, the entire vessel had to be shattered. It couldn't be cleansed. But stone? Stone was non-porous. It was durable. It could be scrubbed, rinsed, and reused indefinitely. It was the preferred material for the meticulous, religious gatekeepers of the day. They were cold, heavy, and purely functional. They held the water that separated the holy from the profane. Now consider the numerology. In the Genesis account, there are 6 days of creation. Each day is a process of forming, of labor, of separating chaos from order. But it's always pointing toward the 7th day, the Sabbath, the day of rest, the day of completion. 6 is the number of man, created on the 6th day, always toiling, always reaching for, but never quite achieving, the divine completion of the 7th. By using 6 stone jars, vessels of the law, of the incomplete, Jesus is staging a precise physical argument. He takes the system of not quite enough and fills it to the brim. He demands they haul water. We're talking about 120 to 180 gallons of liquid. To visualize that, imagine the physical labor of hauling 4 fully loaded residential bathtubs of water across a crowded, dusty courtyard. The servants are the only ones who know the truth. They have the dirty hands, the soaked tunics, and the sore muscles. They know exactly what was in those jars 10 minutes ago. They don't need a lecture on the quality of the wine. They are the sole witnesses to the transformation. They are the only people in the room holding the secret of the mechanics. Then comes the master of the banquet, the architriclinus. He is the control group. In the hierarchy of the feast, he held a position of supreme authority. He was not merely a servant, he was the social architect of the event. It was his job to ensure the wine was flowing, the toasts were dignified, and the reputation of the host remained intact. He was the guy who could make or break a family's social standing with a single word to the village elders. If he signaled the wine was subpar, the wedding was a failure. If he praised the vintage, the family was secure. He assumes the role of the critic. He tastes the wine, and he is genuinely confused. He calls the bridegroom over, not to thank him, but to express his bewilderment. He says everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. The irony is absolute. The man who is supposed to be the authority on the feast is completely blind to the source of the feast. He validates the miracle without understanding it, simply because he cannot deny the evidence on his tongue. The servants, meanwhile, are not drinking. They're looking at the jars. They know the source. This is the divergence between those who occupy positions of religious and social authority and those who are actually doing the work of the kingdom. The authorities miss the miracle because they only consume the result. They are not looking at the jars. They aren't looking at the labor. They are not looking at the source. And yet there is that nagging, unresolved question. My hour has not yet come. Why say that and then immediately move forward? Throughout the Gospel of John, the hour is a phrase that functions like a ticking clock. It's not just a passing comment. It is a recurring structural motif. In chapter 7, the authorities try to seize him, but they can't because his hour hadn't yet come. It reappears in chapter 8, then again in chapter 12 when Greeks come to see him. It appears in the garden, and finally on the cross. It's a marker of his death. By tying his first miracle to this coming hour, he is casting a shadow over a sunny wedding. A joyful, chaotic party and the looming reality of a cross, they aren't as separate as we think. The transition from the 6 jars of ritual water to the wine of the kingdom is a violent one. It is the end of the maintenance of the law and the beginning of the overflow of grace. It is the transition from a system of constant, rigorous boundary maintenance, of don't touch that, of keep clean, of wash again, to a system of abundance, have more than you could ever need. We are left with the image of a party. The wine is flowing, the guests are laughing, and the master of the banquet is scratching his head, trying to rationalize the impossible. If Jesus can take the cold, stagnant water of the old, imperfect system and transform it into the finest wine of the kingdom, look at your own life. What are the empty, heavy stone jars you are keeping around? What are the rituals of maintenance you are performing, hoping for something to change, when you might actually be holding the container for something entirely different? The jars are empty, the water is gone, and the choice is yours. Keep scrubbing the exterior or drink what is in the cup. The feast is already happening. The question is whether you are standing with the masters who consume or the servants who witness the transformation. You would naturally expect a world-altering movement to start with a roar in the capital, a massive public debut on the steps of the temple in Jerusalem, a moment that stops traffic and demands attention. That is how we are trained to expect history to unfold, right? We look for the center. We look for the authorities to weigh in. But the account written by John does the exact opposite. He skips the capital. He skips the temple. He heads straight to a dusty, unremarkable town called Cana, down into the basement of a private house, to a party that is, honestly, just running out of wine. In this episode, we are going to look at why that failure matters. We will uncover why this specific, low-stakes social crisis was actually the most strategic possible place to unveil a new reality. If you have ever wondered why power often operates in the margins instead of the center, well, this story contains the answer. Step out of the harsh, unrelenting Galilean sun and into the relative cool of a stone-walled courtyard. The air here is different. It is thick with the scent of roasted meat, the damp, earth-like smell of packed dirt, and the faint, sweet, and slightly acidic trace of fermenting grapes. It is an ordinary affair, the kind that defines the social rhythm of rural life, where the stakes are measured not in power, but in hospitality, honor, and the fragile, essential social contract of the village. The limestone hills outside are parched, shimmering under a heat that makes the horizon dance, but inside this room, the light is dim. It feels intimate, almost claustrophobic. You can hear the low murmur of guests and the clatter of ceramic, a soundscape entirely unaware of the shift about to take place. If you were scripting a major debut, you would choose Jerusalem. It is the center stage location, the perfect place to make a massive splash. Even in Galilee, you had the Roman administrative center of Sepphoris just 4 miles away, a city of wealth, Roman governance, and massive influence. That was where the real power resided, where the Hellenistic culture was thriving. But instead, we are in Cana. This place isn't on the map for anything significant. It is a Galilean backwater that barely registers in the tax rolls of the era. Why start a project meant to rewrite the human story in a forgotten wedding? It seems backward. But here's the thing. The choice of Cana is not random. It is the first clue that our assumptions about how influence works are about to be flipped. By choosing the least likely stage, the narrative makes a point that is easy to miss. True power does not seek the spotlight. It creates its own. Then the crisis hits. The jars were empty. This was not just a low supply. The wine was gone. For the host, this was the moment the planning failed. The pride, the managed reputation, the social expectation, all of it hit a hard wall. You can almost see the panic in the movement of the host's eyes as he realizes the embarrassment is absolute. The wine was not just a drink, it was the signal that the host could provide for his guests. When the last drops hit the bottom of the jug, the safety net vanished. The effort put in by the organizers hit its limit, but that failure left a massive empty space. Therefore, and this is critical, the conditions were suddenly right for something else to happen. The old system was tapped out, and in that vacuum, the alternative arrived. Mary was not just a guest, she was watching the room. While the music was still playing, she noticed the quiet panic on the host's face. She didn't stand by, she went straight to him. This is an incredibly bold move. She is bringing a messy, social, human problem directly to him. She is not just asking for a favor, she is expecting a change in direction. He pushes back. He says, "My hour has not yet come." He is setting a boundary, measuring the cost of his public introduction. He is essentially asking, "Are you sure you want the clock to start like this?" Therefore, her reaction is the pivot. She does not argue. She simply turns to the servants and says, "Do whatever he tells you." She knows a process is already in motion. This is jarring. You would think someone launching a mission would choose something indisputable, a massive public confrontation. But instead, he picks a problem that nobody else would ever know about. He is redefining what a sign actually is. He is not here to perform for a crowd, he is here to perform for those paying attention. Think about the scale of what just happened. Those 6 stone jars were not there by accident. They were massive, heavy vessels used for Jewish purification rituals, designed for cleaning off the filth of the world, for maintaining a rigid, separate, and external holiness. In the eyes of the law, stone was unique because it did not hold impurity. These jars were the physical machinery of a system designed to keep people at a distance from the holy. Each jar held 20 to 30 gallons of water. That is roughly 150 to 180 gallons of liquid. That is enough to fill a standard hot tub. By filling them with wine, he is not just providing a drink. He is taking the physical machinery of the old, rigid, do-not-touch religion and replacing it with the substance of a banquet. He is turning the water of ritual into the wine of community. In the ancient world, a wedding feast was the ultimate symbol of the end times, the moment when heaven and earth finally sit down at the same table. The prophets often spoke of this day. Amos promised that the mountains shall drip sweet wine, and Joel spoke of the hills flowing with it, as a sign that the curse of the exile was over, that God was finally present with his people. By turning the water of the old routine into the wine of a new grace, he is signaling that the era of distant, cold requirements is finished. He is effectively saying that the kingdom is not about keeping the world at arm's length, it is about bringing it to the table. The servants, meanwhile, are not drinking. They are standing in the periphery, eyes darting between the 6 heavy stone jars and the guests who are completely oblivious to the change that occurred in the kitchen. The master of the banquet is busy praising the wine, looking for a rational explanation. He is focused on the result, not the process. He is the authority in the room, yet he is completely blind to the reality of the miracle. But the servants, they are the only ones holding the secret of the mechanics. They have the dirty hands, the damp tunics, and the smell of water still on their skin. They didn't just watch the change, they were the conduit for it. This is a fascinating inversion of power. The people with the lowest social standing, the ones usually invisible in a banquet hall, are the only ones holding the actual evidence. They are the bridge between the impossible event and the ordinary result. They carry the weight of that knowledge while the guests continue to laugh, oblivious to the fact that they are drinking a new creation. This moment is hidden. You would expect him to stage his debut in front of a crowd. But here, it is a secret shared only with the servants. The wedding guests are just drinking, oblivious to the fact that they are consuming a change. Why be so subtle? He is not here to be the life of the party or a sideshow attraction. He is here to work. This quiet, behind-the-scenes act changes how I read the rest of the account. It creates a tension. The servants are carrying a heavy, impossible truth, and the clock is ticking. Jesus didn't just fix a social mishap. He used a local failure to reveal a truth about human dependence. The 6 stone jars were designed for keeping life separate and rigid, not for overflowing joy. The servants were the only ones who knew the mechanics, and the master of the banquet, the supposed authority, was the last one to understand. He did not start his work with a loud public declaration. He chose a kitchen crisis in a dusty town. This was not about reputation. It was about the transition from a system of human maintenance to one of abundance. We often look for answers in the thunderous, undeniable moments. We want the fire on the mountain, the earthquake, the grand spectacle. But what if the most profound change is found here, in the quiet, desperate, and small parts of our own lives? He is turning the water of our routines into something entirely new. He is taking the vessels we use to separate ourselves from the world and filling them with the substance of connection. The question remains, are you looking at the jars? Are you analyzing the old, empty containers of your own expectations? Or are you, like the servants, close enough to the work to taste the change? If we are honest, we still haven't fully answered why he shifted the timeline. Was it obedience? Or was it simply that he knew the road to the cross had to start somewhere, and a wedding full of wine and laughter was exactly the kind of irony he preferred?